Rocking Chair Session. With Elisa Di Battista and Maria Teresa Barber.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
And welcome to RCS Rocking Chair Sessions, our 14th volume.
Elisa and I, we were just, doing this finger game.
We were counting to figure out.
We were counting the Polaroids because we're getting way up there. And I think I have the right numbers on the Polaroids.
Yeah, you
I think
do.
It has to happen. Yeah.
So number 14 with our guest artist, Lauren.
Hello. Good evening.
Can you please say your last name?
Swartzbaugh.
Swartzbaugh.
Yeah. Swartzbaugh. I was known as Lauren S. for the majority of my childhood, so you're off the hook. It's okay.
Lauren S?
Yeah, Swartzbaugh was too hard for my small young friends to figure out, or my teachers.
So they called you S?
Like, not ass. S, like as in the letter
Lauren.
S.
I was like, Lauren S, really?
You would be surprised at the other versions of my name I've gotten, like in sport, or what was in sports. My brother as well. He got like Swartzbaugh, Swartzbaugh. Like, no, it's just, never mind.
Okay, so I have a theory about your name, and I think that's going to be my first question here. Since I'm from Austria, I speak German, and Swartzbaugh, I would say comes from Swartzbaugh, which actually means Schwarz. Schwarz means black, and Bauer means farmer. So black farmer would be my explanation for your name.
So my grandfather did an extensive family tree following, because we tend to Americanize our names. Like, and they'd start, it used to be Schwartz, like, CH, and then probably BAUM. So it was either Black Forest or Black Bough, they determined from where it started.
Black Forest would be Schwarzwald.
Okay.
And Bough?
Like, it's probably started, it used to be maybe BAUM.
You're absolutely right. And I'm just gonna move the hairs out of the microphone. I'm not gonna attack you. But you know what the funny thing is about Swartzbaugh?
Yeah.
In Austria and in Germany, a lot of people don't want to pay taxes when they do construction work, right? And so if you do a Swartzbaugh, black construction, kind of, or a black work, you do it basically under the table.
Oh, that's like black market.
It's kind of like a black market, but on a construction side, you would call it black. Bau is kind of like a building or something, but the act of building. So a black builder is a Schwarzarbeiter, which is what your name
You've just introduced an entirely different element to my family lineage that none of us have any idea.
Now you understand your whole family way better, right?
That's awesome. We're a bunch of criminals.
But I have to say that in Austria, probably, I don't know how many percent of, family houses are built in Swartzbaugh, are built like without, under the table kind of. Because a lot of people don't have that much money, especially young families. And so they just ask their friends and they do it themselves.
Well, talking about family, we did look you up and we noticed that you hail from the New England area. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
I was born in Stoneham, which isn't far outside of Boston, and then grew up between Massachusetts and mostly Maine. So I went to junior high and high school in Maine, and that's when all things nature kind of informed every cell in my body. But yeah, I pretty much spent most of my time in Maine in my formative years, and then went to college, partial college in New Hampshire, for aeronautical studies.
Nautical studies? Like
aeronautical, like flight systems and design and
aeronautics. Ooh.
But yeah, New England, it's just a beautiful place. The coast of Maine is just rocky granite, raw, wild nature. Mm-hmm. And it definitely informed, it was the best place to be a kid. So I was always outdoors running around in the woods, and I would sometimes imagine I was like a Native American. I had a bit of like a feather fetish. I had feathers everywhere and running around thinking I was a deer. It was kind of a mess, but in a fun way. In a kind of a healthy way. But good place to be a kid, good camps and stuff, and all that. So.
Well, we do see nature in your current work, as well as the machinery, which makes me think of the aeronautics. What particularly in aeronautics were you learning? Were you learning to become a pilot?
Yes, as well as I was really into the design of aircraft and the aerodynamics of different structures. And that was informed by when I was a little kid and, put your hand out of the window of the car on the highway and what makes it do that? It's kind of amazed by that, as basic as it is. And then I started volunteering at Alice Head Transportation Museum, which is this. They had lots of vintage World War II planes, and I just went there I'll just wash all the planes. I just want to learn whatever I can learn. I was who's this crazy 12-year-old? So, I was 13 actually. I was 13 when I started there. So I was just around these awesome old World War II vets, ex-pilots, Navy guys, Army pilots, and they just loved that I was just what's wrong with this person? Sure, let's teach her whatever she wants to know. So it just kind of stuck. So when I was in high school, my I don't know, instead of taking an exam, my final exam for physics, I built a plane with a guy that was designing a Berkut, which was an experimental plane. Looks like a spaceship. It's wild.
I see.
So my physics teacher kind of set me in a place. He gave me all these tools to work with that I was never really big in math, and I was interested in something that took all of these strengths that I didn't really have. I had them, but I didn't. They were very buried under my artsy fairiness. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to be running around and writing and painting and stuff. But that guy, there's always a catalyst in our lives, or several. Mm-hmm. But this guy, my physics teacher, Mr. Bentley, he was definitely a catalyst towards. It's you know what? Here are all the tools you need. Go for it. See what you come up with, and let me know how it goes. And so he believed in that passion, as off kilter as it was for me and my background. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't the best student. I was always capable of doing whatever I wanted, but I wasn't that into school. Mm-hmm. To me, I learned more when I was out doing other things, other things in general. But, so it grew from there.
So he took that side project as a replacement of your final, basically.
I didn't even have to take a final exam.
That's amazing. We love you, Mr. Bentley. Right. That's so cool. But
it made sense because I learned so much more instead of just studying. I did very well in the class because I realized how much I needed to be good at this. Because at that point, when I finally focused on what I wanted to do, that was my junior year. And colleges weren't going to look very favorably, especially the ones I was entertaining. Look at C's and B's, and so I had to get pretty good pretty quick and stuff that mattered. But he's if you have the discipline to figure out how to build a plane with somebody, then fine, whatever you want. So it worked. It was cool, and I learned a good deal and met some incredible people along the way, and so that's where the New England thing, and my family's still up there.
So did you ever fly a plane?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. My first flight was in a Waco, which is a 19. Oh gosh, I'm going to get this year wrong. It's in the 40s. It was an open cockpit biplane. So you had the leather helmet on.
It's like the World War planes.
For sure. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So it was crazy.
Dusting those
like that.
Nice.
And so that was my first flight ever. And then my first lesson was when I was 16. And that was in Vancouver, or British Columbia. A friend of the family is okay, here, this is your 16th present. See if it sticks. See if it's for real. If you really want to learn how to do this. So I was all for it. That never wavered. But I like the poetry and the romance of flying. I went over to Alaska to kind of scope it out and see if I want to be a bush pilot. Most average bush pilots have, a life expectancy of a week, depending on how bad they are. Obviously, the good ones are still with us. But I was watching, it's this is so cool. They're landing on icebergs, and they've got these giant, black Cheerio tires, and they're landing on snow. I'm this is so neat. So that side of aviation has always been in my heart. Mm-hmm. And I was involved with corporate aviation, which is it sounds great on a business card. I'm an aircraft, management consultant or whatever, but it's, it's just corporate jets and rich people that don't care about flying. They just want to treat you bad and think that you're paid slave. They're paid slave. And I'm this is really not what I had in mind. So it was a good experience, but yeah, I just put that aside. That wasn't really my calling. It was a good, also, I learned a lot, but.
How long did you do that?
That was like 3 years.
3 years.
Oh.
But it's also like a lens. I feel like when you're in a cockpit, which I've also had the luxury of being in, like it's a different viewpoint, like that viewpoint from above. Like you have your side window when you're traveling as a regular passenger, but when you're in the actual cockpit in the front seat, I mean, just that viewpoint is just so majestic. And I feel like you as a photographer, like you have like a certain viewpoint in how you visualize what you capture as well.
It's completely an experience. I get chills just even thinking about that, because it shifts your perspective on so many other things on the ground. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're flying through a cloud, like, okay, the idea of flying through a cloud is kind of cool. What a novel concept. But when you're at the controls of a plane and you're making it do that, and then it's just a whole other depth of experiencing a moment. Mm-hmm. It's like a whole other plane of reference that we've never had down here on terra firma. Mm-hmm. So, and that absolutely, I was like, well, how the heck did you get from there to, being a photographer, or an artist? Like, well, I've always had the artist side to me, but I never really looked at photography as that was never really my medium. I never played with cameras.
Really? So how did
we were talking about that before.
Like, where did you begin? Like,
I've had, I feel like, several lives that kind of condensed into one. So when I was second year in college, I took a break during summer to go pay off. I was modeling part-time on occasion when I was up there. And aeronautic, that kind of school was very pricey. So I came down here to model part-time, and it was meant to be part-time. And
down here as in Miami?
Miami, yeah. So
really?
Yeah.
Already through college, okay.
With Wilhelmina. And so good agency and all that, but it was very unscrupulous people, my agent in particular, that I ended up having to work with. And so yes, it's very illustrious concept, but this guy was a complete dirtbag, to be honest, to be really put it nicely. So I kind of got stuck here a bit. Mm-hmm. All of my stuff was back home with my, at that time, ex-boyfriend, in a storage unit. And there's so many layers of this. It's like I'm trying to condense a lot.
You were stranded in Miami. What a horrible, non-tropical.
So the camera thing. I will land my plane, as my hubby puts it. But I went down. I started working at Nobu, which they opened up this. It was a restaurant in the hotel. It was like a big restaurant, and all that, just to make really fast cash, like for real. I'm actually on salary and all that stuff. And then I had taken a break for a couple of weeks from that to go. I worked in Key West because I needed to do something that was kind of healthy for my soul, because I am not a hospitality industry person. I was in that a lot, and you're doing everything for everybody else, and that's good to a point until it starts sabotaging who you are as a person. So I recognized that was happening pretty frequently. So I went to Key West, worked on a schooner there, Schooner America, super awesome, huge old wooden thing. And someone gave me a camera when I left Miami as a friend of mine here. Say, take this with you, do something with it. I'm like, all right. And it was a film camera, 35 millimeter. And so I ended up working with this particular crew of people that rotates quite a bit. It's very historic. It's the Schooner America. It's like the America's Cup boat. It was the exact replica of that original schooner. It had a lot of soul to it. And the crew that happened to be working when I was there, it's like we had such an awesome chemistry together. We were such good friends. I started documenting like a day in the life of the America crew and submitted those photographs to a magazine, and ended up winning this contest of sorts, along with the story and the photographs and all that. I'm like, cool. So then I just kind of kept shooting, and then some architect picked up a photograph, and then I got an architectural contest, award. It was all these things. So it was all very organic. And then people just started my friends saw my work and said, hey, can I buy that? Like, you want to buy that? Sure. This is cool. So yeah, it happened very, very authentically. I was never creating my work to make money. It was coming from the truest place there was. And so I feel very blessed. I feel like I've kind of built my house from the top down. Like I didn't have any, real education per se in art until I went to ICP in New York,
International Center for Photography, right?
So that was cool.
Oh, yeah. And then we noticed that you were there for about a year. How did going from somewhere that was tropical, as is obviously South Florida, to the city, like New York City, like how was that transition for you? Like artistically, do you feel your photographs shifted, or your vision, or your practice? Can you talk a little bit?
I love New York City, and also I'm very much of a nature person. So I was definitely living there full time for the duration of a year and a half. I was able to come back here on occasion because my fiance at the time was here. It took, honestly, energetically, it was really, really taxing it took about a month and a half for me to kind of find my rhythm.
The transition to New York to...
And I had spent a lot of time in New York on business before, but, for a couple of days here and there, and I always loved it. But with that moderation. So I tend to be extremely sensitive to energies, and not to sound all new agey and weird, but it just absolutely, it took all of my energy, just sapped me. I'm like, I could have laid down in Times Square getting out of the subway in the morning to go to class and just fallen asleep. It was it was really bad. And I'm like, well, this is strange. But eventually, it's like vibrational, like a frequency. Eventually you kind of fall into suit with your environment and what you're feeling, what you're seeing around you. And I found this little apartment it was in Soho. So it's like, if I wanted to leave at 2 a.m. with my camera and just walk out, stuff's happening. Always something is happening. And one of the comments one of my instructors had at ICP was, one of these nights you get a break tonight. Like, don't sleep. You just walk and you just check stuff out and photograph. And you can do that in a lot of places, but very few is there something that you're going to see nearly every minute. So that was neat. So I fell in love with New York in a very different way than I'd ever experienced before. Some of my dearest friends I met at the time that I was there, and was like, oh, New York's very harsh. It's cold, blah, blah. I'm like, you get what you put out. And I was, I took I attended that program with 60 other people from all over the world coming together over one common medium, which was really quite cool. So you have so many different perspectives and it's informed differently from, depending on what their culture is. And I just learned to see in so many different ways. So it's like, you can have a project you were working on kind of stuck with for a couple months or whatever. And, you put your images out on the table and people look at that like, well, have you thought about this? And that's awesome. This is brilliant. I don't know, because you're in it. You're too close to it. And all of New York in general it's such an incredible source of inspiration and, creative feedback if you're open to hearing it and recognizing that you don't have the answers to everything that you're doing, but other people can help you kind of see them if you're open to it and, generally have a good attitude. I mean, there are moments, or there were days, for sure, that I just stayed at my apartment because it was almost too much. I just needed it was just too much. Or I'd take a drive and I'd go up to Maine and I'd just go camping for a weekend. So I needed that balance, or it was a little too much. But yeah, New York's amazing. I never once felt unsafe at any time, even in the middle of the night. I mean, I love that. It's good. It's like humanity is really, really rich there, and people they look out for each other, even though they don't know you. They will put aside their busy life if they know that you are really seriously in a problem. You have a problem happening here. So that was cool.
How did you find out about ICP, and how come that around that you made the decision to move to New York and do this?
I initially looked at Parsons because Jared had taken some courses at Parsons. Have you?
Yeah.
Nice. So I was all excited because it sounded amazing. So I went and I met with them and they gave me a tour, but they weren't as photographically centric as I was.
An MFA photography program that runs during the summers. I believe it's 3 years or so. Yeah.
So they suggested for what I was looking for to visit ICP. And ironically, literally the next day they were having their open house and all that. So there were so many synchronicity things that happened with that. And then to further that, to go back to the whole crazy, visioning stuff and the energies and all that. When I got home, I was so excited. I'm like, okay, I'm going to apply to this. And it was like 2 months, or maybe it was like two months later when you'd hear back from the board. And I submitted my stuff, and I drafted a letter I made up ICP header on my letter, stationery, and I hung it on my wall. And it was like an acceptance letter. And I looked at it every day, but not just like looked at it to look at it. I felt like I just opened it and said, "You're accepted." I felt that every time. And when I did get the letter, it was practically identical to the one I made. It was nuts. So I absolutely believe that stuff makes.
That's so great.
You got to put it out there, but you got to be fully cellular on a cellular level into what you're envisioning and what it is that you want. Or it's like it's more just ether.
There's a lot about this focus, right? That gets you a long way if you're like focused on what you want and what your goals are.
I've had too many experiences that back that up to deny it or to pretend that it's not as effective or present, I guess, as it is.
Mm-hmm. So when you were done with ICP, with that 1 year and a half,
so
right?
It's a 10-month program. Mm-hmm. I stayed 5 extra months. Mm-hmm. I was doing some work with my Magnum Foundation. Mm-hmm. I was just trying to get in a couple different. I have a nonprofit that I run with my brother. Mm-hmm. So I have that side of me too that was kind of informing different organizations that I might intern with, which is funny. Like at that point, say I was 30. Wow, 36. I was 35 then. So the 35-year-old or 30-anything-year-old, going and say, "Hi, I'd like to intern with you." You just feel like you're 6. It's like really hard to be very confident. I mean, you can be confident, but it just, I don't know. It's kind of a precarious thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I stayed a few extra months also because I felt like I just had all these incredible new tools and I wanted to just play a little bit because I really was focused on all of the curriculum and the assignments and all that. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to kind of be for a little bit before I left. And, my other half was very supportive of that, which is cool. Between him visiting me here or there and vice versa, it was like, it worked out. Also, when he and I met, he was going in the military. So it was easier for us to have that space because of our history together, which was a blessing on top of everything else. Because a lot of couples wouldn't have been able to pull that off. Would have been.
That's a long time to be so far apart, right? Oh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then when you moved back to Miami, was that also when you came to the Bakehouse? Because we forgot to say at the beginning, Lauren is also an artist here at the Bakehouse.
I am.
And your studio number is?
30.
30. It's
doors
downstairs.
Open, come visit.
First floor.
Please come by, visit.
So when I came back, I was really needing that artist, that collective, that creative collective feeling, because it was like this vacuum that was kind of left when I got back. This can't be. I need like-minded people around me that are excited about what they're doing.
The same thing when I moved back from New York. It's like you go from having like-minded individuals that are in their different mediums, or in your case, they were all in the same media, but you could have feedback, you could have a sit down, you could talk about, you could go arting to different shows, or just have that, like you say, community.
You have the critiques all the time, it's kind of like for me, it was also like when I finished the MFA in San Francisco and I moved here, and it was also like I really needed the community in a way. And even if there was not so much interaction at the beginning, just to know that I'm like not on my own in a way, right? It's like.
So I was introduced to the Bakehouse by an associate artist who was using the darkroom. He knew I was looking for a darkroom and in addition to everything else, and heard about the Bakehouse. Like, no, how have I lived here for, at that point, like 8 years and I've never heard of this place? Embarrassing, but we've since gotten better with our marketing, fortunately. That's good.
We're still pretty much a secret for a lot of parts, right? But we're better known. So my first studio was actually next door to where you are now.
Oh,
really?
We're on the second floor currently.
Oh my God.
So, So when I got the dark room, which is like finding a unicorn anywhere now.
Yeah.
And
you worked in the dark room right from the beginning?
Yes. I was doing a lot of alternative processes. So the state of the darkroom then didn't really bother me because I was doing things in there.
Was it really bad then?
A bit of a mess. Put it this way. Because it's such an archaic process, nothing's really changed since. So you can make I could easily make what was there work perfectly fine. It didn't take like NASA grades, anything to bring it up to where I needed it to be. So it worked out. And that was even more spectacular.
We have spectacular to say, now. If you're
we have to say that the darkroom at the Bakehouse got a complete overhaul thanks to Pedro Watson and others, but he was mainly the guy who did it. And it's like perfect. Like everything is cleaned out. Everything is put together.
Almost too clean. I'm afraid to make a mess.
I'm still like, I didn't go back. I was developing a lot before the clean up kind of, and now I feel like, oh my God, I don't want to mess it up.
We need to go and make a mess of the darkroom for sure.
But I didn't know you were in there a lot, like before it got really bad, or I don't know.
I was doing a lot of like Holga, like it was all very alternative. A lot of it was using the UV boxes and stuff for different things, like cyanotypes and the Van Dyke process. And so a lot of it was more just the chemistry, and I just needed the UV lamps. Mm-hmm. But to me, I was shooting digital quite a bit, and then I felt that was taking my hand out of the process.
Yeah,
and
that was curious to ask, like,
really
how you felt about digital versus more
disconnecting me. So it's good for, certain clients or, assignments that, you need immediacy. Mm-hmm. And even Polaroid is not immediate enough for them. It needs to be, firewired into your laptop and online. And so that's more documentary or whatever. So there's a place for that. But the art side, the artwork that I create is almost always film now. Mm-hmm. And even there's one piece I have in my studio that half of it was done digitally and the other half was done with film. It's because I had an underwater camera and I couldn't figure out how to waterproof my Polaroid at the time. So, but there was no Photoshop. Instead of, I'm trying to figure out how can I authentically bring these two images together that doesn't involve software. So I ended up having to print it on this handmade rice paper to get the transparency aspect of it and layer it over the film photograph to create what I was looking for. And it was so hard and so stressful because I was like running this paper, unbeknownst to the ICP people, through these, $10,000 printers and hoping that I didn't break it. But it all worked out. But so it was kind of stressful, but at the same time, so much more rewarding because you're doing something that, well, not that you're just not supposed to, but that no one's seen done yet. And that I've certainly never tried. And then say it's completely hands-on because, you're massaging the paper through this to make sure there's no bubbles and that the wrinkles don't destroy, 6 foot worth of paper print and all this. So I'm all about the analog. And it was a really good exercise in another sense that earlier when I was shooting, I'd have a vision in my head. And if it didn't come out exactly like that, I'd get kind of annoyed. Like, man, it was just taking the fun out of it. And I was like, okay, well, something's got to shift. And obviously, I'll keep learning and I'll make better pictures, but it's my mentality that's got to change, or I'm just not going to enjoy my own process, which kind of defeats all of those points. So one of the greatest lessons I got out of ICP was an instructor, Marina Berrio, and one of our assignments I decided to make a pinhole camera out of a matchbox and 2 canisters of film. So I, with great focus and attention and planning, took my 36 exposures and did 7-minute long exposures all over New York City with these, historic, beautiful, incredible spaces. The light was just right and all these things. Each photograph probably took me a couple hours of planning around it. So I was very excited when I went to develop the photos for the assignment. And then I get my 36 exposures. And if you come down to my studio, I'll show you. It's 36 of these interplanetary sunsets. Like, what? What just happened? It was like I was getting attacked by photon beams or something throughout my entire roll of film. So I was very, very angry at this. And when I brought my photos in and I put them on the table, I didn't have a tantrum, but I was visibly upset. I was like, I completely messed this up. I don't know what I did wrong. Here's my stuff. And she was very quiet. And we had, our entire class is sitting around this long conference table. There's 20 of us. And she's standing there in quiet and silence, just kind of sorting these things out and kind of putting them in lines. And she put them in this series. And we're all like, that's amazing. That's gorgeous. This is brilliant. Like, exactly. No, but it's like she taught us in that quiet silent moment how to take something that might be completely the opposite of what you ever wanted. And it became like the most powerful thing probably a lot of us came away with, because you're allowing what has come of something to it became something incredible all in its own, but completely different. It was even more beautiful and more, it was abstract, but it was really, really cool. Mm-hmm. So that honestly shifted how I started approaching my work from then on. And then I started really loving, the alternative process, because a lot of it's very painterly, and you can still make a mess. I miss making messes. It's hard to make messes with digital photographs unless you blow up your computer. Or with Polaroids. So I'm doing scans of my Polaroids. So instead of, you see this 3x3, image, which is beautiful, but when you start getting into it and going bigger, there's so much going on with crystallizations and tonalities in the chemistry that are altered by the temperature. Mm-hmm. I'd actually keep some of my film at different temperatures because you get different tones. You get cool blues and stuff. Mm-hmm. Miami usually, if you don't do anything with it, it's like yellows everywhere. It's very warm. So I loved that because you were guiding the subject, but that's about where your control ended. And you kind of pretty much for sure that it would be in that frame. Mm-hmm. But as far as the exposures and all that, it was a lot more up to, the ether around you as to what you're going to see out of it, or the, how the chemistry might miss a corner, or how it might explode over here in the middle of your picture. It was a really good personal experience that absolutely changed my approach to things for the better. Mm-hmm.
I like how you mentioned the painterly. Can you tell us a little bit more about prior to being introduced, the photographs and basically the camera and being just told, okay, go run with this. You mentioned how you were already artistic. Can you tell us a little bit about the mediums and your experience with that? It started very early, 4 or 5. I think the first and only time I ever said to anyone that I was bored, and my mom looked at me, she's like, really? Mm-hmm. And she left, and about 15 or 20 minutes later came back and having harvested all these completely random, disconnected things and put it in front of me on the table. She's like, you're bored, huh? Make something. I'm like, okay. It was also one of the best lessons I think a parent could ever do. Mm-hmm. I never, ever said I was bored again, because I realized there's no place for that. There's just always something that you can do something with. So I never really had a singular medium. I was painting a lot. I did a lot of pen and ink, line drawings. Mm-hmm. I was writing. I wrote a lot, but I would kind of incorporate the ink sketches into the writing. Mm-hmm. So, I tried watercolor. That was fun in concept. It was very delicate, but I felt it was almost too relaxed. I liked acrylic because you could bring texture, to the whole thing on top of just, pretty photographs. It's tactile. Mm-hmm. But that was it. I had, a couple really great art teachers. But that never really went beyond high school. So everything else is just, I've always personally been motivated. That's been my outlet. I've had a lot of not easy experiences in life, which is a good thing. But my writing or being creative with whatever's around me really helps to make the most amazing lessons or experiences out of those not so great moments. So.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever published anything of your writings?
I was in some different anthologies in high school. I submitted some things, so they did get published. They were in the short fiction, mm-hmm. Some poetry. But after high school, it was important to me personally. It wasn't mm-hmm. important enough to me to put it out there to other people, because it was more for me. Mm-hmm. With my photography, it was very much, firstly, it was for me. And then when I started working more with digital and then with documenting nonprofits, it was very much for that cause, mm-hmm. which is obviously a very good thing. But at the same time, I wanted to find a way to still keep the art side and keep the soul, keep the feeling, the emotion that I had about the cause, how to be able to still speak through art in the documentary piece. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. It's always a lot about, for me, art making is a lot about also playfulness and a lot about freedom, right? So if that's like, I
was trying to find a way to hybridize it.
Yeah.
So instead of just having two different lives where, one side I do documentary work over here and on this side I do my fine art over here. So it's still two categories, but there are a lot of areas where I'm able to kind of cross over and they're one filters the other and they kind of blend.
But there's a place for it. Control, yeah. Visually, you're still in control, and you still like more or less decide how you're going to capture that moment.
Well, yes, for sure. And then I've also learned that a lot of the greatest way to receive a positive response about any cause is not by, you can't motivate people through guilt and showing them, the atrocities. Okay, obviously there are atrocities. We all know that. We get it. So how to translate the issue at hand into something that's really, really beautiful that they want to be a part of. They either want it in their home or they want to learn more about it because they're so drawn and they're so moved by an image that spoke to them on a level that's beyond just visual. So that's how I was able to kind of blend those lines. So that made me happy because I was really frustrated. Like, how do I do this? And it kind of happened. It was just organic. It's like if you just, if you feel it enough, and eventually it just kind of happens. Like, oh, okay, great, check that box.
But is this under the name Suntory Red?
Satori.
What is
Satori?
that?
We were wondering about where that's coming from.
And you didn't research?
No, we asked you so that we can.
You discovered the hole in our research.
Is the Japanese term for the moment of enlightenment, like the aha.
Oh, okay.
So when you're just, you're just kind of like smacked upside the head by like, it's not a feeling. It's not a singular element of an experience. It's just that feeling in your belly that makes you realize like you just saw something for the first time. Even though you've seen it every day, you never really experienced its true presence. And the red is nothing to do with my hair color, contrary to people thinking that. It's more the sense of
Elisa thought that.
It's totally it's the sense of urgency. I feel like we all really urgently need that moment, that Satori, in our own lives, but also and everywhere at this point. But so that's where that came from.
And can you talk a little bit more about the works that you do for the NGOs? Like, is it more in the States or is it abroad?
They are. Or is it most all of them are in Thailand, Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, including like the border, near the border of Burma, like Kanchanaburi, and we have done some relief efforts in Haiti because it was in my backyard, and I also that's for another interview. It's going to be long, but no, most of our work is in Thailand. So it's Genesis Network, and we're focused on pretty much pulling the rug out from under the entire network of child traffickers, slavery, recruitment, all of that. And most of that is you're going to source it back to northern Thailand. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, we've got trafficking problems here, and slavery had all these same problems here. Oh, we for sure do, but the roots are coming from that tree. And by going, that's the hub. So that's why we do most of our work there. We build schools and vocational centers, and the idea is to create an infrastructure within these communities so that they don't need nonprofits coming in to save them anymore. They're given the tools that they need to work with and capitalizing on the strengths they already have to create the economy they need so they don't have to rely on selling their children. And it's an education. There's an educational format infused for the adults too, not just for the kids, because they really don't understand, what is happening to their children when they send them to a better place in the city where they can get education. They really don't know. So by creating that infrastructure and just it's educating from bottom to top and vice versa, and giving them the tools they need to they eventually we phase out of that whole formula is the idea. And we're very, very grassroots. It's only 4 or 5 full-time people. And then if ever, when we're working on a project, we've had people, like hundreds of people from completely different, all over the world, from Australia to Japan to California. And they just come together, and it's, someone has mortar, someone knows how to lay brick, someone knows how to teach English. So eventually you just have this entire picture. It's all like little pixels come together over a common goal and a common vision. And it's incredible what you can do. And the other thing is, $1 goes a lot farther there than here, unfortunately. And there's a lot less red tape, a lot of military and all that. But it's like the people that we work with, they're from there. That is their land. And they know these people. So we have all of that red tape that is there for a lot of other organizations that's completely removed. And we just once funding helps. But it's really exciting to see what can get accomplished there in pretty short order.
How did this whole area start for you?
This is my brother.
Flying planes and
this is my brother Adam.
It's your brother.
It's amazing.
He's active Army at the moment. But when he was like 18, right? He was 17 or 18, and he volunteered with USAID in Phuket. I'll talk later. When the tsunami hit. And it was meant to be a short stint, and you see a lot of atrocities when you're out there for more than a week here or there. And he stayed out there he's probably out there for like close to a year. He fell in love with the culture and the people, and was really, really motivated to create something that's more long lasting than just building a couple buildings or schools or whatever they were building at the time through USAID. So he came back a very different person. He was in a dark place. He saw some stuff that, we're very close, and I will never know some of the stuff that he saw. But I got a call one morning. This is maybe a month or two after he got home, and it was really late. It was like midnight or 1 a.m, and he told me, he's like, I got to do something more. I want to do an organization or a nonprofit. Or I'm like, okay, because both of us have absolutely no idea where to start with that, but why not? And so I had a glass of wine, and we just brainstormed and came up with Genesis Network. Genesis is an acronym for Global Empowered Networking through Enlightened Social Improvement and Sustainability. I'm like, wow, we're good, because that was
you came up
we did. I was like, wow, we did this in 2 hours. It's good wine, but it's a long acronym, but we do a lot. The idea is pulling together all of these different tools and resources. It's not all just about money. You can have people with so many different backgrounds that don't even know each other, that come together over that one vision, and stuff just happens. It was crazy. How quickly we built some schools. That relief effort in Haiti, we didn't have any connections there at all, but we found enough people with enough of what we were looking for, and they were all on board. And it's including, getting private planes to carry us there. Like, this is happening. So it's really exciting, because it's like there's really nothing that's not possible.
So how long have you been doing this?
We founded that in 2007.
Wow, 10 years.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Does that help inform your work, like this different viewpoint? Do you find inspiration? Do you come up with new series from that? Do you document when you're abroad?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it informs... it doesn't inform my artwork subject-wise, but in terms of how my spirit feels... It's definitely, I appreciate a lot of things, a lot more, and in different ways than I maybe would have 10 years ago. I'm also really sensitive to that stuff to begin with, but for the first time, honestly, I just went out to those projects in Thailand in October. And I had been working for years, fundraising and getting other volunteers together and to go out there and do that. So. And I never met these kids firsthand. I was talking to them. I had other photos of them from other people, and it was just, I felt like I was missing. So it was a big part missing. So to go out there and see the schools that, I worked really hard here to help, put together and get the funding for it, and meet the kids that were, that are enrolled in these classes and that we just built a library for. Like, this is so, it's just it's amazing. So wow. Yeah, you kind of come back on a levitating a bit. Because you're putting the human aspect back into into human giving. Instead of just like going online and saying, here's $20 and that's it, and then you go about your business. Yeah. You see where it's going, and you're more part of. It's a fabric that you're part of, instead of just like some clicks and some buttons and stuff. So, so that was cool. Yeah. So it's an active, ongoing thing.
Where's your brother at the moment?
Adam is based. Oh, right now he's actually in North Carolina. He's been based in Okinawa with the Army, but he has an exercise here. So just the fact that he's in the contiguous U.S. makes me smile. But he has. Yeah, my little brother's a Green Beret. It's crazy. I can't pick on him anymore. He gets back. Wow. But no, he's pretty cool. But, no, he's in Japan. He's based there for a bit more.
In Japan?
Okinawa, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I must go visit before he's done. Or I feel I miss when he was in Italy because I'm insane. I don't know. But, yeah.
On your website, do we have time? Okay, 5 minutes. You have a few series. Like there's this, the one that I like, there's one that has like mostly machinery, but you also have like the more, I feel like the one you talk about, like this human connection to nature, like the more landscape scene. How do you feel differently, like from the hard, kind of sort of like coldness that you would receive from like machinery that's like this inanimate versus like the natural, more like energy driven, natural scenes? Like what's for you
That's a very good question. So when I shoot, those are aircraft parts and engines and things.
Oh, so going back to the aviation, okay, cool.
And motorcycles.
Right. Well, the motorcycle's a little different, but as far as the engines go and the aircraft aspects and photos, I've approached those as portraits. I know they're inanimate, but there's so much going on in terms of, these are old vintage planes that were kind of melting into the planet, and there's just the patina and the oil, and to me there was like a lot going on there, like these storied elements to it.
Characters.
So to me, it was still a portrait of sorts, which is kind of how I approach my photos of nature. To me, it's like a portrait of a moment, a personal experience, something that I can't. If you just see it with your naked eye, it's like you don't really see it until you capture it with a particular light or with a particular kind of film that's like grainy, and it adds a layer of poetry that you're not going to always get with a naked eye. And I also see things weirdly. But so in that sense, they are connected in that they're depicting another layer to the subject that you might not see if it's not framed that certain way or has that certain light hitting it that certain moment. But I've had people walk in my studio like, wow, how many artists are you showing here? No, they're all me. So, fair question.
Yeah, it is. But there is something very intimate about your pictures of machines. Like there's almost a love story going on, or like there's I don't know.
There's a love.
There's a love, the colors, and also like the framing of, the engine parts.
It's not just an engine. Like it feels like there's something
It feels
more.
like, like when you say it's a portrait, I definitely can see that in the images.
Motorcycle piece that you're referring to, that's like one of my, people love that. I mean, that's one of those things that's not really, I just had, and there's no Photoshop in that, by the way. That is insane
BMW,
lighting.
yeah.
I just went bonkers on the lighting. But it's still a portrait, but it's almost like it got to be, because it was cool in its day in 1933. I'm like, it's back to having its own party. Okay, I'm still relevant. This is neat. It was a very different approach than I usually take with my work, but it was fun to do.
And I mean, as a psychologist, I always think about, Jung is basically the guy that always makes the best, connections between like inanimate objects and what they can mean for the human psyche, And usually it's like, I probably think more about houses and how the house is like could be like a representation of identity, right? And I'm just thinking about what a plane could kind of be a metaphor of the inner world, of the like if it is all about like kind of relationships of different parts working together.
I have of a plane that's sitting in very, very tall grass. It's like being reconstituted into the earth. Like your planes are supposed to be in the air and flying through pretty blue skies and all that, and carrying us to all these different places. And to me, it's like it kind of brings it back to our plane of living. No pun intended. Sorry, no plane of living. Right. So that photograph I love because it's actually a visual blending of that boundary. So it's kind of bringing us back into the same place.
Like on the ground.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess this is a moment we normally ask, like, are there any special projects coming up for you? Is there anything you might want to experiment? Any new series or trips coming up for you?
I have a show. I was just invited to participate in a show with Catherine Mixell and Umbretta Agro. So I'm excited because I love Catherine. I respect them both very much. So I was super excited about that.
It's going to be in Wynwood, right? In September.
September 2nd for our listeners. Check it out.
So Umbretta, like a couple pieces I already have, but there's a couple. I've been experimenting with these crazy film panoramics that are multiple exposures, and I kind of like to do something completely new and maybe like a lithograph or something of some sort. So I'm going to play a bit. So that's what that's first on the horizon.
Wonderful.
Well, I guess it's time for Maria to ask our last and
very last question.
Go ahead, Maria.
As you know, you've been sitting in a magical rocking chair.
Right.
And the chair grants you 3 wishes after going through the ordeal of answering all our
being
mean questions.
Wow.
So what would your 3 wishes be?
That should be as hard as it is to answer. So I have a lot of wishes. I'm trying to. There's one that would probably address a lot of the other wishes if it actually came true. If we could, all of us, all human beings, remember that we're all made of the same. We're all made of the same stars. All the same. We're part of the same fabric. I think that would really. Our level of respect for ourselves and each other and our planet would shift to a very higher level where it belongs. And that would kind of trickle down into all the other concerns I have, which are environmental and socio-political, and that we don't kill each other off. So that would be one wish. Another wish would be that that my family members have the platform to live their life to the fullest, most healthy, happiest, free extent, so they can do whatever it is that they feel they must do that will make them happy. That would be great.
That's lovely.
Wonderful about that could occur.
2 external wishes. Is there one for you? A personal one?
If I could completely eliminate judgment of self and of others, I feel that I would live my day, and I do that for the most part, but certainly not devoid of judgment on all occasions, at all times. I think I would create on a whole other level, and I think I'd just live a different, in an even on a higher plane, and I feel I do that to a point, but. Keep trying.
Oh, we hope our chair grants you those wishes.
Oh, yeah. Our chair is going to.
Thank you, chair.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for coming.
Thank you, Lauren.
Fun.
That was wonderful. It was a really beautiful journey that we were able to witness.
Yes, well, thank you for the guidance.
I love that it wasn't linear. I just love that it just
not at all. We were flying around.
I'm not the most linear-minded person
in a plane. All right, thank you so much, guys, for listening again. And we're going to be back next week.
Yes.
With rocking chair session number 15 already, and Barbara Bolini is gonna visit us next week.
Yes, she is.
All right,
we look forward.
So thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you both.
Bye, guys. Bye.